What's going on, people? It's your boy NGS back at it with another video, and today we're going to be talking about God of War Ragnarok. This is the first update we have gotten on the game since they announced it, if my calendar is correct, almost a year ago. So in the 12 months since, we've really not learned too much about the game. We haven't heard anything from PlayStation themselves. We haven't heard anything from Sony Santa Monica, unless you want to count Cory Barlog ducking and dodging all these tweets like he's Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z. Dodge! But in typical PlayStation fashion, we've learned new information on God of War Ragnarok on a random Wednesday morning because, A, why not? What else were you doing on this Wednesday morning? This is what I'm talking about when I say PlayStation Mindshare, you guys. PlayStation can literally tweet a logo of the PS5 and that shit gets trending worldwide, breaking records. It's the same logo! But what's really hilarious is that this wasn't an update about God of War. Like, it wasn't like they came out and said, hey, everybody, we have a new update on God of War Ragnarok. Here's some new gameplay, yada, yada, yada. This information actually stems from an interview that was conducted with Herman Hulst, who of course is the head of PlayStation Worldwide Studios. It was conducted over on the PlayStation blog, where they were talking about a myriad of things. It wasn't just God of War Ragnarok. They were talking about their partnership with Jade Raymond and opening up the new studio Haven. They were discussing how many games they have in development from first party, a staggering 25 plus. In addition to some other things like their experimentation with PC gaming, yada, yada, yada. It's actually a really good read. I'll post it down below in the video description for anybody who's interested. But the two nuggets of information that come from this interview, which is honestly what is going to be dominating the news cycle until further notice, have to do with two games. And the updates are as follows. God of War Ragnarok will no longer be hitting its 2021 release date. Is anybody surprised? And in addition to that, both Gran Turismo 7 and God of War Ragnarok will be cross-generational titles. Meaning, when they release in 2022, they'll be launching on both PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4. We believe in generations. Yeah, more like we believe in money. Now, before we dive into the main meat and potatoes of the video, I do want to speak on the release date situation, considering a lot of people are wondering, what do I feel about the game getting pushed out of 2021 into 2022? I'm going to be honest, y'all. I'm not going to sugarcoat shit. I did not expect that game to come out in 2021. Hell no, no way. First things first, if you've been following games for any amount of time, you guys know it's par for the course that games get delayed. It is what it is. And if a game has a release date, 9 times out of 10, they're not putting that release date up there because they think, yeah, I think this shit will hit by that date. No, they're putting that release date up for investors, trying to make people happy, garner hype, yada, yada, yada. It's the same song and dance pony show. We know the routine by now. Very few games can be revealed and released in under a year like Devil May Cry 5 and come out amazing. Most of the time, it's like, hey, we have this date, but don't get attached. And I'm not going to go over the same old on why games need to be delayed in order to polish them, yada, yada, yada. I'm just going to post the very memorable Shigeru Miyamoto quote in 3, 2, 1. Oh, yes. Absolutely. Dude, this is great. Powerful. Moving. Amazing. And just in general, when you look at how troubled the original God of War, I'm of course speaking on the 2018 relaunch, how that game literally was going through problems left, right, and center up until they finally released it, there was no way in the world that they were going to not only announce the sequel, in addition to say, hey, it's coming out next year. I refuse to believe it off of that, but I was welcome to be surprised if they actually hit that date. That would have been amazing, but it getting pushed into 2022, the whole world situation aside, is going to be good for the game. You know, it just is what it is. PlayStation has a very high bar when it comes to quality and making sure that their games actually run on launch, sans a few exceptions. But for the most part, PlayStation quality is pretty damn good. And of course, there is another elephant in the room. It's more of a recent phenomenon that has plagued the game industry. It's gotten a lot of publishers to look a little closely at the game development and the needs of the developers and what they are saying, rather than just trying to rush something out. It's a game that's kind of old by now. I mean, it came out like 6 months ago, but it definitely has me feeling a little yellow, to say the least. Now moving into the juicy part of the discussion. Gran Turismo 7, in addition to God of War Ragnarok, being available on the PlayStation 4. Now, this whole situation is kind of funny. So in the case of Gran Turismo 7, I could have sworn that this game was going to be a cross-generational title off the rip. Just because, you know, it's like a racing game and, you know, they're not too like demanding in the sense that, oh, we can only do this on this one hardware if we're releasing this game within like the first year or so. I was like, okay, maybe this game will actually be cross-generational. But when people started telling me, no, Gran Turismo 7 was a PS5 exclusive up until today. In fact, people started posting screenshots where it said PlayStation 5 exclusive. I was like, bro, what? Now, talking about cross-generational games, are they a problem? Well, it depends on who you talk to. For some people, they don't care because game engines are scalable and it all comes down to how crafty you are as a developer. But if you talk to other people, they say that no, fundamentally, they are holding back gaming. And I'm not here to really pick a side in this situation because I honestly do believe that both sides are right. Asterisks need to be added on both of those statements. I do have to say that I am kind of disappointed that both Horizon and God of War are going to be cross-generational titles. I'm just going to be honest, you guys. I've been a PlayStation gamer since I was a child, owning the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, and now PlayStation 5. And one thing that PlayStation has been very good at is when you buy a console, they make sure that they are firing on all cylinders when it comes to their first-party development. They make sure that when you buy this hardware, there are going to be games to play that can only be done on that hardware. Now, of course, there are some exceptions to the rule. You know, sometimes it takes a little longer to get those games, like on the PlayStation 3. And in some situations, they would actually go ahead and release a game on the PlayStation 2, even though they have a PS3. God of War 2007 comes to mind. But when you take away all of those cherry-picked exceptions, the constant remains. PlayStation is very forward driven. They are forward thinking. They want you to get the best bang for your buck when it comes to new experiences you can only get on their hardware, built from the ground up. But with this generation in particular, PlayStation 5, you know, they come on here and they're talking the same old shtick that we're used to. You know, we're building experiences from the ground up for PS5, and then literally 2 minutes later, it's like, oh, all those games that we just showed off, yeah, they have PS4 versions. But don't worry, the PS5 version is going to be the best way to experience this game. And it's like, bro, not to make this out to be a fanboy thing, but dude, this man Phil Spencer took so many arrows to the knee. This man Phil Spencer just like bloodbath by people saying like, how dare you think about the consumers releasing your games on the new hardware when it's held back by the old hardware for the first 1 to 2 years. No, that is egregious. That is anti-consumer. And here we have Jim Ryan. It's the same thing. Like, corporate wants you to find the difference between these two photos. There is no difference. Well, there is actually kind of a difference. PlayStation releases games. I'm just going to be honest, guys. I do take great pride in the fact that whenever there's an opportunity to take a jab at a corporate executive who thinks they're down with the gamers, I will take advantage of that. It doesn't matter if they're Team Xbox, Team PlayStation, or Team Nintendo. Everybody gonna catch this work. But in all seriousness, I don't necessarily have a problem with cross-generational games, considering for the most part, a lot of the games that release in the industry are third-party, they are multi-platform, and a lot of those corporations, they're like, hey, we like money, so if we can get this game out on as many platforms as possible, do what you gotta do to the game developer. Do it. We do not care. Go ahead and make this shit happen. Which is why for the first 1 to 2 years of a console's lifespan, there really aren't a lot of crazy heavy hitter, oh, this can only be done on a next generation console, with a few exceptions in between from a first party studio or a second party deal, things like that. But for this generation in particular, I know they say this every generation, this generation was different, man. They're coming on here and they're talking about the SSD and how it's going to fundamentally change game development. You had all these Xbox deep dive conversations. You had the PlayStation 5 breakdown with Mark Cerny and how this is fundamentally going to change things. This is huge. Game developers get excited for these SSDs. You guys have wanted this for the longest time, and now they're becoming a standard in the industry. It's a different kind of conversation. And for a company like PlayStation to come out there and say all these experiences are built from the ground up for the PS5 and all their major games don't really take advantage of the new hardware, it's kind of disappointing. I mean, you have a couple of smaller games here and there that are doing that, like Returnal, for example. I mean, the fact that that game is basically live, die, rinse, repeat. That game is only possible because it is running on SSD and it's so instantaneous. Ratchet and Clank is like the first true from the ground up next generation PlayStation 5 exclusive where I can realistically look at that and be like, okay, this couldn't have been done on a PlayStation 4. Because of its game design. It's not just graphics. It's not just pretty visuals. It's not just frame rate. It's not all these nice bells and whistles that we get on the new consoles. Like, those are fantastic and a reason to buy a next generation console if you are going to be playing cross-generational games. But it's disappointing that PlayStation, a company who for its entire lineage has always been about giving you new experiences, their biggest games for the first 2 to 3 years are going to be held back by 2013 hardware. And I know it sounds like first world problems, Neo, you're being over dramatic, but just look at it for a second. Look at it, guys, right? Spider-Man Miles Morales, okay? That game came out and people weren't too pissed off that it was cross-generational, considering it's a smaller scale and scope game by comparison to the first one, and they put it out in like 2 years. So it's not that big a deal. It's prettier, it runs better, awesome. But then you go into Horizon Forbidden West, which is the first huge major PlayStation game where you're just like, yo, this is the game. Like, that game, for a new IP, that game sold 10+ million units on the PlayStation 4. And the fact that this new experience is being made with the PS4 in mind, I'm not saying it won't be a great game. I'm sure it will be a great game. But it's going to be a game that is designed with 2013 hardware in mind. Guys, this hardware is almost 10 years old. So there are certain things that when you are crafting a game, you have to adhere to. And speaking of Horizon, there were a couple of gameplay mechanics that Guerrilla said we would have loved to introduce this into the game, like having more aerial enemies, but the PlayStation 4 could not handle it with all the other things we had going on. Speaking of Spider-Man, for example, Insomniac wanted to do a lot more things with Spider-Man 2018, but they couldn't do it because of the limitations with the hardware. You see what I'm saying? It's not always about the graphical fidelity or the frame rate. It sometimes does come down to the gameplay design, because you got to look at it like this, right? If everything is so scalable, right? Everything is scalable, true. But what about certain things that you can only do with, let's say, an SSD or a different type of architecture? Fundamentally, there is going to come a point where that old hardware just can't keep up. It can't keep up. They got to tap out. And then from there, you have to make the executive decision on whether or not this game can be cross-generational or it can be next-gen only. And there's also another thing that is being brought up in regards to these games being cross-gen. A lot of people are throwing around the fact that the reason why they are announcing all these cross-gen versions is because of the chip shortage with the PlayStation 5. Given the worldwide situation right now, getting your hands on tech is damn near impossible, especially for these new consoles, GPUs, things like that. So a lot of people assume that, okay, that's the reason why they're coming out with PS4 versions, because there's only about, like, what, 8 to 10 million PS5s in people's hands, and there's 110 million PlayStation 4s. Obviously, that makes sense from a business point of view, which is true. It is a very sound argument. But I don't think that the two are correlated to the degree where there's a chip shortage, let's announce a PS4 version of God of War Ragnarok. I think that fundamentally, they had already had the PS4 in mind when they were working on a sequel to God of War Ragnarok. And if it actually did hit that 2021 release, which is like a year into the life of the PS5, it wouldn't be so bad because it's a year. You know what I'm saying? But it's still being designed with the PS4 in mind. So the further this gets delayed, whether or not it comes out early 2022 or whether it comes out late 2022, it's still going to be held back because of the PS4 console. And it just really worries me about a couple of the other games that they haven't announced that, for all we know, could be cross-generational. You get what I'm saying? Like, for some things, it's not a big deal if it's like a smaller scale and scope. Other things like Insomnia coming out there and saying, yo, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart can't be done on the PS4, and you guys are starting to see why. It just really bums me out, guys. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not gonna mince words here. Like, yes, I am coming from a place of privilege. First world problems when it comes to video games that my $500 console does not utilize all of its powers for its games. Like, obviously I get that there's more important shit in the world, but again, we buy these $500 consoles to play things that we can only get on that $500 console. And it's looking like we're going to have to wait a little bit longer for those next-gen only experiences from Guerrilla and Sony Santa Monica. I assume they have other teams working on stuff. In the case of Santa Monica, they've been aggressively hiring for a lot of different positions. So I assume that is because they are working on a new IP in tandem to God of War. But when that releases, we don't know, because PlayStation likes to stretch shit out. You know, there's no way they would launch God of War from Sony Santa Monica in 2022 and then Sony Santa Monica's new IP in 2023, unless it's something like completely different, like a smaller title or a multiplayer title or something like that. But if it's on the scale of God of War, oh, there's no way. That thing is like 2025 if we're lucky. But hey, we'll just have to see. But that's all I really want to say today, you guys. I know I rambled on quite a bit about this whole situation. Is cross-generational really a problem? I mean, I think it's only a problem depending on who you're talking to. At the end of the day, I think a lot of these games are going to be great. But, I mean, I just can't fight this feeling that how much better these games could have been if they were next-gen only, so we could actually see what all the hubbub is about the SSD technology or this new architecture. Because what we've seen right now, like, we see games that look good, they look better, but nothing that's like, yo, next gen only, next gen all the way. This is why you need a PS5, and this is why you need a Series X. We'll see what 2022 has to bring. Anyway, post your comments down below on what you guys think about this. Make sure, if you haven't already, to be following me on both Twitter and Instagram. All my links are going to be down below in the video description, in addition to our Discord community, the Phantom Weirdos. And for me to you for now, my name is NGS, signing out. Like always, I will catch you guys later. Peace.